Okay, well, also I started the stream. I've got I've got the channel here. I'm gonna share it to my parents. Yeah, I haven't figured out how to type without the world knowing. No, doesn't it make more sense to give people a chance to know it started and then join? Oh, right. That makes sense. That's something you know how to do. Okay, I'll cut. I'll start the intro.
Gee, Earl Grey.
Okay, welcome to the Picard maneuver.
Hi. Oh, my shape
Your
is wrong.
your shape is wrong. Um, well, we're not going to stay here very long, but I'll do something quickly.
Oh, that's true. It usually fixes once we're like in our better spaces. Dominion.
Dominion. Okay, my name's Tim,
And I'm Joel.
and we're here to talk about Star Trek Picard, Episode 7, titled Dominion.
That's correct, Tim.
So, so we're doing it a little later than usual, but that's cool.
It's more than cool.
Uh, I did not mean to sound passive aggressive in that at all. But what do you think of the episode? What are we talking about, Dominion here?
Oh, we're jumping right in with no. We're not warming up first. We're not stretching. Don't we usually do a Star Trek stretch? Star Trek stretch. There, I did it.
Makes
Do yours,
sense.
Tim.
It's a mental stretch.
Okay,
And
fine.
I did it.
Anyway, I did not like this episode. It was the weakest of the season. Maybe not as bad as any of the season 2 episodes, but pretty bad. Felt like a filler episode. When it ended, I was like, what the heck? What just happened? Is that the episode? And that's my quick thoughts on that one. You, Tim, what do you think?
Well, I can say quickly, I did read an interview with Metalis about this episode, and he said that this episode and the next episode are like a two-parter, apparently. So there might be more satisfying resolution to something next episode, but I 100% agree it was the worst episode of the season. A lot of it reminded me of, remember Hide and Seek in the second season? The Scooby-Doo episode? Where there was like people going down hallways and like it felt like that. It was the only thing I liked was LeVar Burton. The only thing I liked was Geordi.
Thank God for that. Because if you said you didn't like Geordi, like I'm always gonna. Geordi could literally be in a remake of, I don't know, what's the worst movie of all time?
What's that movie everyone makes fun of? The sequel, Electric Boogaloo.
Sure, Geordi could be in that, and I'd be like, Geordi deserves an Oscar. I say Geordi, LeVar Burton.
No, but he was good. Like I felt him in this episode, but I didn't like Data in this episode. Most of the episodes this season have had solid sort of central conflict arc plots that are resolved, and this one fell flat. It compared itself in some ways to Deep Space Nine, and I think that was bad because it doesn't live up to that. And there's a lot to talk about, and
there's a lot to talk about.
And it touched a lot on sort of like who Jack is and theories and what's going on in a way that was kind of frustrating. And
So, just getting started. Steve is here. Max here.
Oh, wow.
Yao's here. Hi, everyone. Max says weakest of the season, but still so much better than any other season. Yeah, I do agree with that. Mac liked Spiner. I think he did a good job. I just think, and honestly, I just don't think they're giving. I would say this episode they didn't give the actors a whole lot to work with to really and I feel like you were probably frustrated with a lot of the same stuff as me, as far as that uh, lore just becomes like a plot device. Um,
Yeah, and I think it could have been so
is
much
evil something?
cooler. When we get to those scenes, I have some ideas of how they could have done it better.
Yeah. But anyway, how? Just a quick question, because Steve had said it sounds like he couldn't hear me, but I think it got fixed. Is that correct, Steve? You want to give me a thumbs down
Oh
if
yeah,
incorrect?
I can hear you okay, but I'm not the
I just want to make sure. I think we're okay.
I'm
But
not the streamy.
just double checking. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully they can hear me, because otherwise they just see my mouth moving, which
Unless they're really good mouth readers.
movers, lookers, mouth lookers. Well, let's just keep moving on. So,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Let's get
unfortunately,
into
worst of the season by
there.
far,
That's
but
better framing.
still better than the other seasons. I hear Joel now.
Okay.
Right on, Steve. Right on.
All right. So I've got some screenshots this time, and we can get right into talking about the episode and what we thought. That's what this is, a deep dive. What we thought about it.
Spoilers ahead.
Spoilers ahead, and a little bit of negativity ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna. I don't know. I'm gonna try to be fairly nice, because they've done a pretty good job so far with this season. And but the biggest thing that kind of irks me is that I was so excited for this episode, because I've gotten to the point with this season where I'm really liking it. So I'm like, nice, a new Picard episode, and I sat down to watch it, and it just was kind of It felt like I had been just punched in the gut. Maybe not that bad, but
I felt that way a little bit. I don't know, but
felt
I mean,
like I
we're
had
running out of
been-
time. We're running out of time, as far as the show, right?
Oh.
Like we don't have time for
Yeah.
a season episode 7 to be a filler. It was shorter. It was like, I don't know, like 8 minutes shorter than most of the episodes this season.
well, it felt short, and it felt like nothing happened. I mean, there was a few big reveals. So let's get into
Well,
what
the
they
episode
did.
had a sort of a cool sort of spacey effect as it got into it when it first started, and then it sort of faded to the Chintaka scrapyard, which is a Deep Space Nine Dominion War reference. There was the Battle of Chintaka, which I guess is still a scrapyard.
Hanging
There's
out.
tons of ships that were destroyed there. They've forgotten about the cloak. They're now hanging out in a scrapyard, which makes sense to
Yeah,
hang
they have
out
to
there.
hide in a scrapyard.
If you don't have a
Doesn't make
cloaking
sense.
device.
But where did the cloaking device go, though? So let's.
They completely forgot about it.
Where did it go?
I don't know. Maybe
Is it cloaked?
maybe it is cloaked. Remember when they first used the cloaking device, and they sort of showed us them arriving at Daystrom, and they weren't cloaked, and then it sort of we saw them cloak, and then Shaw made a line like, "They can't see us. We're cloaked." Maybe they are actually cloaked, but we because we know of the ship, we don't see it cloaked. Like it's one of those, the audience doesn't seeing what the bad guy's seeing.
I'm sure you're right about that, Tim.
Makes sense.
I'm sure they're just cloaked. That's all it is. Yeah, it didn't feel like a whole episode, Max said, and I agree. It just felt like bits and.
So right
Sorry, I was
away
looking at
we
some
had a
comments.
reveal.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
The sort of there was a bunch of talk online about there's some hints that someone would have a cameo, and with they sort of introduced him like without showing him, and they heard the audio, but it's like tweaked because they were like scanning his audio files or something. But look who it was, it's Tuvok, but and Tim Russ is great too. I mean, Tim Russ was fun. It was Tuvok, but we learn it's not really Tuvok. It's evil. Changeling Tuvok.
Yeah, but hey, can I say something about this though? Is like one of the things that's been bugging us is these like kind of double fake outs or like poorly written like tricked you, whatever. This was one of those again, because it was like, is he a changeling? We're worried.
And then they scanned him. He said, "No, he's cool." And then he knew about the Calto games.
And then he knew about the game that he played with Seven, and he was like, "You beat me numerous times." And then Seven has this smile, and then of course the Voyager music plays like, right? But then it almost cheapened that, right? Because then a couple seconds later, she's like, "What about how did she put it? The planet
She said,
met on."
what about that time we went to that? We scanned my brain at that certain location, And then
Right.
Tuvok's like, yeah, that was a great place. And she's like, no, you hate that place. All Vulcans hate that place.
Right. And then I almost thought, like, they had just played the Voyager music. Then it would have been funny if they play, like, suddenly, like, some evil, sad music. And it's just, like, Anyway, it was just weird because if it was a changeling, like, why did they have to do the double fake out? Why couldn't it have just been they check and she realizes it's a changeling? Like, it just annoys me because you can tell the writers are trying to be like, oh, gotcha. Stop it.
The show is often reveal driven. It's a reveal driven show.
But not even like, I mean, in some cases it's been good. And actually, again, I said I wasn't going to be too mean. In last episode, there was a lot of cool stuff that they did and did really well. And I think a lot of the fan service that played well into the plot, good job. This episode, just sometimes you can write something. It doesn't have to be so complicated. But
and
anyway,
narratively, Tuvok sort of establishes, hey, they're alone. There's no one in Starfleet for them to turn to. And Seven's like, that's her just learning it. It's not really Tuvok. Tim Russ, spoiler, tweeted that he has at least two appearances. So presumably,
he's back again.
So we sort of leave it hearing that like Tuvok's in danger. So they're not going to set up Tuvok in danger without coming back to him later, right? So don't worry about Tuvok's what I'm saying.
I'm worried about Tuvok. But yeah, he's coming back because they made it very clear that he was captured by a changeling.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is. Starfleet's completely overrun.
How many changelings are there? Because they have to have like complete coverage over the leadership of all the ships.
Yeah.
Or is
They're
it
literally
it
able
must
to...
be they must be very strategically taking over the exact people that they know they might want to talk to. That's why it's Tuvok?
I don't think it's that. I think they didn't figure that out. The writers didn't. But yeah, I think you're right. That's the changelings strategically took over people that Picard would talk to.
And Seven.
I think so. One of sorry, but one of the big things I want to say it now because I'll probably forget is
Is it about them?
Oh, there's just so much going on. So Vadic is the bad guy, but Vadic has a big bad guy above her that's telling her what to do.
Yeah, that's in the next scene.
And essentially, they're trying to lead us to believe that the whole thing is to mess with the day there. I keep forgetting.
Frontier Day.
Frontier Day. If Steven's watching still, he'll be like, Joel cannot remember the name of this thing. I cannot remember the name of Frontier Day, and I have no idea why. But anyway, they're all like, what else do they need?
They could just manually plant a bomb on a bunch of ships and blow it up, whether they're all at Foundation. Because remember, Geordi said in the previous episode, oh, Starfleet's so stupid and incompetent. Against my specific recommendation, they're putting all the ships of all of Starfleet's fleet all in one spot.
Right. So
they can be terrorist attacks.
I guess,
but like that's the setup. That's what's going to happen. It's just
that
makes sense for like a lone terrorist attack, not the terrorists have already in control of them. Maybe all the Frontier Day all along was planned by the changelings. And they were like, how do we get a bomb on every single ship at the same time? Well, we can control almost all the ships, but then we have to order them all to get to the one spot. And then they're like, oh, Frontier Day. Maybe the entire thing is a changeling plan.
But anyway, yeah, sure.
I mean, Vadic's been around for over 20 years.
Yeah. Regardless of, like, is it all a changeling thing? Was it a thing they planned before and then the changelings just took it over? A lot of it isn't adding up. And if the writers wanted it to be, like, if they wanted stakes, because it's important in drama to have, like, stakes. Mm-hmm. And the bad guys should also have stakes. And so I think at this point, the fact that they've literally shown that everyone they talk to has been taken over by changelings and that they can't turn to anyone. So this episode, as you mentioned, the whole point of having Tuvok was kind of to show that they can't go to Starfleet at all, right? But wouldn't it be better if, like, they did talk to Starfleet and Starfleet was like, we're aware and we're trying to figure it out, but it's difficult, and that would then create even more tension. But if they talk to, like, Tuvok,
yeah, because right now we don't have a good picture of what the heck's going on in Starfleet at all.
All we know is it's completely overrun by changelings who seem to have control over everything. So, like, they've like there's just what are the stakes for that? It's just they've already won. They
On
have
top of that,
control.
the subtext has since the start of since Picard season 1 has been that Starfleet is now evil and incompetent, and maybe doesn't deserve to
And
keep
changelings.
going. And changelings when it's not run by the Tal Shiar.
Yeah, so I just think like subtlety goes a long way. If they had still been infiltrated by changelings, but they talked to Tuvok, and Tuvok just, how many people are changelings? Like it's we're not sure what's
It's
going
dark.
on. Then at least we'd be like, okay, cool. Like they don't know either. But instead, it's just us that don't know. They know. Anyway, okay. Next.
Yeah, so we have a quick scene
slide.
here. I don't know how much you want to. So they set up this ridiculous idea. They set up this ridiculous idea that what Vadic is doing with Picard, or the bad guys are doing with Picard's body, is going to make a perfect doppelganger so that Picard could get in to do a terrorist attack or something bad at Frontier Day. I don't understand it at all. The doppelganger, it seems like it's not supposed to be a serious thing. The doppelganger would have his DNA, but obviously he's an android now. I know it's a more human android, but they'd still be able to scan him and tell them it's a undead human Picard. And they also say that's why they want Jack to make his DNA even more DNA, which doesn't track. And it's one of those things where, is this supposed to be ridiculous? Are we supposed to be skeptical and think that Beverly is lying about the way DNA works?
So about the way DNA works, I think there's a couple issues here, obviously, but I do think it's a fake out. I do think it's another fake out by the writers to try to misdirect the audience.
It can't be a real thing. It's just planting an idea in our head.
Yeah, but it's another lazy fake out. It's kind of like, we'll misdirect them a bit. It'll be good enough. But it's not. It's not good enough because it's really obvious that it makes no sense. It makes no sense to, like, a lot of it doesn't make sense, unfortunately, but like to capture Jack, to then but then also take Picard's dead body, but you still need Jack to make like a doppelganger of Picard, but you've already got his DNA in the dead body. Like, yeah, it just makes no sense. And sorry, we got a comment. Not necessarily. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, that's what Mac's saying. That's their theory about the body. But it's just like, that's Geordi saying that. And Geordi's like, Geordi and Beverly, and like, they're smart. Like, they'd be like, that doesn't make any sense, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that we can get into the dynamic though, but the important thing about these characters is they are competent.
They have been in the past.
There's an important line in this sequence where they say Raffi and Worf were at ExoCorp, and they're on their way back now.
Okay, cool. Coffee run. So that was another thing. And I actually, I watched a couple other reviews of this episode, and somebody actually said they liked that Worf wasn't in it because they aren't happy with how the writers have been writing Worf. I don't agree. I think that, like, but I don't agree for different reasons. I mean, I love Worf regardless, and yes, I do believe that, like, the writing on Worf has just been, he's been comic relief for the most part.
And we criticize that.
Yeah, but the problem I have with them being gone is they have, what, 32 hours left before Frontier Day?
36, they say in the scene.
So with 36 hours left and this huge problem to solve, they had time to somehow, while the ship is hiding in a scrapyard, like, how did they get from that without being seen by the ships that are chasing them? Because they seem to be having to hide.
They took the cloaking device on the other ship.
They probably did. They should have mentioned that.
Maybe that was in an early rewrite, and they just cut that scene, and they didn't think of it.
The scene where Worf was like, "I'm going to take the cloaking device," and they were like, "Okay, we're in the scrap heap now. We're good."
Oh,
but it's sense. so that's my main problem with that, and also I'm kind of like a little bit irritated at, I really want them to be the crew to kind of, once they've gotten together, I want them to stop leaving. It's like, just stay back together. Like, why? But I do think part of it is an issue with I think with budget, because I think a lot of these actors are probably pretty expensive now to have around. And so to have every one of them, like it's just going to be a really expensive episode. And this also did feel like a bit of a budget saving episode. Like it just didn't feel
I can't
as expensive.
believe they're still on the Titan. I thought the entire point of the super dark Titan set was that it would be easy to redress as another spaceship, and that they'd be jumping to other spaceships.
For Vadic's ship. I like what Mac's saying though, like because I thought this too, that the online theory, or there is an online theory that says that Picard had passed nanoprobes to Jack, and neither had aromatic.
Yeah, so
syndrome.
and
I think that's the best theory right now.
Well, that's in the next scene actually. So we get some retconning of Data, but one of the things Data says, and then like does give us no more information, is that he strongly suggests Picard never had aromatic syndrome. So
yeah, neither. Yeah,
and it was sort of like done like, oh, and that's the only thing I can tell you right now. I'm broken. Like it was an annoying way to reveal that, but I guess they had this season does not have a lot of respect for Picard season 1.
I'm okay with that.
And I guess I'm okay with that. So let's not complain about that. I was a little. So they redid Data here. They've basically decided that B4 and Soong are just memory banks. They've cut them out. I mean, remember last episode he was all 4 of them. Now they're cut, and they've completely forgot about Lal, and it's just Data and Lore. And there's some uncertainty about who. What Data is and who can say. And here's that little graphic of saying like the red is evil Lore and the blue is good Data, just like the Force.
It's always blue and red. Yeah, so what was I going to say? I think we were cutting out there for a second, but hopefully it's good now. I didn't like that if you're going to set up Data or this Golem as having Lal, B4, Lore, Data, and
Soong, the other Soong.
Then he doesn't anymore.
It's just easier to write. It was just simpler for the plot in this episode.
Yeah, it's definitely simpler, but they made a point of having B4 and I don't know. Did Lal introduce herself too? Because there was a moment where
she didn't say
like,
I'm Lal.
B4.
They did mention Lal's like programming as being involved, but even in the way they described it last episode, Lal was not primary.
But we did hear B4 though. We heard him say, "I'm B4."
He was like, "I'm B4." I can't do the. I can't Spiner. I'm not Spiner. I can't a Spiner. I can't.
You tried. You started.
I started to try, but then I realized I had nowhere to go.
I'm B4. He's very innocent, right?
No, it was more like super scared. Like, I can't. I literally can't do it.
Anyway.
I'm not a Spiner.
So now it's Data and Lore fighting in there.
Yeah, but one thing that's important in this scene is that Geordi does very much say cognitive functions only. We're not ready to wire up and turn a Lore on. We know Lore is dangerous. You can't trust the Lore. We're not going to put him next to the destroy everything, make everything bad button. No, this is cognitive functions only.
Yeah, so then nothing can go wrong, right?
Nothing can go wrong. So the aromatic syndrome is the main reveal in this scene, and the sort of stuff. Lore says something about Picard being a perfectly imperfect Picard through and through.
Well, does that just have to do with the fact that he's a synth, or like a not Picard, but he is Picard?
That was a line in a previous Picard season, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't remember it.
Quickly circling back to some comments. Not sure why Vadic wouldn't know they stole a cloaking device. That's Steve. I think maybe he's being...
No, she must, because they uncloaked and beamed them up and then recloaked and left at Daystrom Institute. So Vadic must know they have a cloaking device, which is a problem in the next scene.
And Max says, with Jack's abilities, I'm wondering if there's a Q connection. I doubt it now because of last season, but because I almost feel like they'd be afraid to try to bring him in again after how much they butchered Q in the last season.
Yeah, there's so much layers of what they would do.
Yeah, there.
But the next scene we have another. I think Krang is. I've been calling him Krang. I think Krang fits the best. The brain
Oh, yeah.
overlord of Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You remembered his name last time. I couldn't.
Oh, I don't
So,
remember.
but there's some important lines here. So first of all, we don't get Riker or Troy in this episode again, despite that being the entire point of the cliffhanger at the end of the last episode. There's no Troy. It's completely off-screen references. The cliffhanger went nowhere, and she says right in here basically unexpected loyalty, unexpected loyalty from Picard's friends. They didn't tell anything. The problem that I sort of have here is they couldn't show a scene of her torturing or trying to get information out of Riker by threatening Troy to follow through with the cliffhanger last time because there was no ask for Riker. Riker literally didn't know anything. He had nothing to say. There was no point capturing Riker. Riker didn't, like, the only thing he kind of knew was, I think at the time when he was running, I'll go fight those guys, he heard that they had a cloaking device, but Vadic would also already know they have a cloaking device. Like, there's literally like, what was she trying to ask Riker? Did Riker know that they're going to go hide in the Chintaka junkyard? There's
I
no
wonder, though,
discussion
if
about that. Like,
I feel like maybe the only reason that it's just leverage. I think she would have just had
yeah,
Riker.
well, it would be useful as leverage to Picard, saying, I've got your friends here. But that wasn't the setup. The setup at the end of the last episode was, I've got Deanna Troi leverage to force Riker to tell me something. Remember? Riker's like, I'm not going to tell you nothing. You can't force me. And there was only one thing that would. And then they cut to Deanna Troi, and that was the cliffhanger.
And then he's like, oh, that would.
Oh, that would. But there's nothing. There was nothing to ask him. He doesn't know anything.
No,
other than to try to lure people to try to save him. But they don't do that.
And that didn't follow. Well, they haven't done it yet. And that's another reason why this episode felt like filler, because they didn't advance a lot of the plot forward, specifically the cliffhanger of last episode.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to watch an episode where you see someone get captured and it seems very dramatic, and then the next episode they just don't even exist.
Yeah, it's weird.
Just...
Presumably, Worf and Raffi have actually gone to save Riker. Well, right? That must be what's happening, right?
Well, they mentioned that it had something to do with that.
But they didn't say that. But there's... Well, we'll jump to the point where they sort of have a plan, and then there's some ambiguity of how much time has traveled. But there's some important lines here that are significant. Krang says, their kind is beholden to a single flesh, referring to solids. So what's interesting there is it sounds like, because we've heard Krang refer to your kind and their kind. So it sounds like Krang is neither a changeling or a solid. And Krang also says, referring to Jack, we must have the boy, or you and your kind, referring to Vadic and her changelings, will find your existence meaningless. So Vadic needs Jack for either the terrorist attack, the vengeance thing, or some medical thing. She needs Jack. But Krang isn't either. He's not a solid or a changeling.
But Krang, with what you're calling him, needs Jack the most.
Seems to be. Seems like maybe even it's not even Jack that's important to Vadic. It's something that Krang has that he's trading.
Well, and it's also Vadic's revenge on Starfleet. Yeah, and so maybe Krang promised Vadic, if you helped me, because Vadic in this episode, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, the whole how she became.
Yeah, we'll talk about when we get to that scene. There's a lot.
Right, but she has reason to want to take revenge on Starfleet. But one thing I brought up is that Starfleet, it was like an abusive situation, torture, and so she's really angry at Starfleet. But basically, this disembodied head also seems to be torturing her in a similar way. So why
she's very afraid of it. It's clearly an abusive relationship, and she sort of remembers in the previous scene she was passing that abuse on to her other changeling goons.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it's not healthy. It's not a healthy workplace. It's a toxic workplace environment. That's the truth.
No, it's not good. So back to kind of the Q notion and just kind of some of the theories that are floating in from Mac, from the thousands of viewers, and
from our two.
Is not that it would involve Q, but that it would have some kind of similar, for whatever reason, there's a Q-like trait that's being exhibited by Jack, similar to an episode where there was an ensign who discovered she was a Q.
Oh, right, Amanda Rogers.
And I can't see Borg.
Yeah,
Affected
there's
person,
his
the nanites.
experiences are darker, but there's some similarities to her and
Well, they could
Amanda
make it work,
Rogers.
I'm sure, if they wanted to. And then Mac thinking that you can't see the Borg being able to control someone else telepathically, and I would agree with that.
No,
There's something
there's
else going on
nothing Borg going
beyond
on
Borg.
here.
What's Steve saying? Yeah, that's not anything like Borg or changelings we know anyway, though I don't
He's
quite
agreeing.
understand why they couldn't shapeshift into or assimilate something that can. They
Well,
are
nanites are kind of shapeshifty too. I don't know. There's some big ambiguity there.
but they work together. Nanites, shapeshifting.
All right, so next thing we have sort of some development of Jack and Sydney, which I like Jack and Sydney. I mean,
Go up the hill to fetch a pail of water.
Yep. There's sort of he asks her if he wants to see his room.
That was
and
weird.
they sort of yeah, it was weird. Like it didn't seem like his character nature. Like he
Yeah,
seems
I don't know
too
why they
cool
did it
for that dynamic. He in fact this entire episode he seemed. I mean, in the next scene, I also feel like he's not the same character as we got at the start, and I don't know what to make of it entirely. But what's important here is that we get sort of we learn that he can get into Jack can read her mind basically.
Yeah. So, and it seems like this is along the line. This is coming from the same place that's giving him nightmares. That's making him see a red door. It's making his eyes turn red. Was it Lore and Data? Lore was the red side. It could still be Lore. It could still be like a Lore thing, could it not? Maybe Lore is like the disembodied head is actually Lore. Is this possible?
I don't think so.
I'm just using colors because like it's the red side, and then the tendrils are red, and
Right.
the door is red.
A lot of people have referenced the paw race because they were red and evil, but red is just evil. I don't know. I actually think I'll bring it up now.
Red is just-
Well, I got pictures for it later, but I don't think that the red eyes or the red stuff was added until late in editing, because in the scenes where he has red eyes and we can hear her mind, she's like, why is he looking at me like that? She doesn't recognize he has red eyes. She doesn't see the red eyes.
That's true.
So
I never thought about it.
either
Yeah.
the eyes aren't really red, which is kind of weird because I don't understand who's seeing them as red, or what I think is basically the decision to make his eyes red and then to make her eyes red was a late decision that was made after filming, after audio looping, to make it clearer to the audience what's going on inside of him, and he's having those feelings and connections and stuff. So I don't think the red is significant. I think it's a late add to the edit.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah. Max did the same thing, and he didn't know his Jack's eyes were red. But that's in That's in a couple later scenes.
No, but I think that's like talking about some of the things that we've been noticing the writers maybe are adding later, or the episodes maybe were intended to be edited a different way. So what does that mean, though? Is that I think what it means, is maybe what you're implying, is that everyone's reading into the red eyes, but if it was added later, it actually probably wasn't part of the script.
Yeah, exactly. I don't it wasn't in the earlier edits that he even had red eyes. So that implies that we can't take too much out of the redness of the eyes to
And that essentially that's the only thing that's been connecting people to the Pa race, correct? Like there's no other
Yeah,
reason.
that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So I think that cuts. And I never thought the power race because we haven't had any references to that stuff.
Well, it'd be a lot to explain in the last few episodes, so. But it's true that it might be only we're meant to see it, and it was intended, but it wasn't intended to be something that. But it is strange if his eyes are glowing red, why she wouldn't notice that at all. But what do I know?
Get a picture of it, but it involves Shaw. I don't know their names. Says Captain. There's a long-range trace attempt, and they think it's coming from Shrike. And there's this thing about how, all captains have a frequency that they can communicate with.
Right.
That it's Riker. So we know Riker's okay and is on the Shrike. It's important. It's super, super confusing. Doesn't make any sense. But the point is, they magically learned that Riker's on the Shrike. because otherwise they didn't know that. They don't know what happened to Riker. In fact, as far as they know, Riker's dead, was shot. And yeah, and even in the scene earlier, the Tuvok guy was like, "Hey, Riker's dead. No point looking for Riker." So
Right, but
there's the really weird scene where they're like, "Oh, by the way, captains all have a frequency that lets us know they're still alive."
Yeah, I didn't really follow. I know I watched one of the other reviews, and someone said
didn't make any sense. It was really hard.
Well,
that's the best.
Someone said that this was reference to. I don't know if it was a TNG episode or no. I think it was an original series episode where someone says all ships, all captains or something have like some kind of code connected to them that I don't know. I didn't follow it as well.
I've never heard of this. Anyway, but it's important plot-wise that they know Riker's on the Shrike, I think. And that probably is where Raffi and Worf go. Then there's this. We have this scene here. This is the other scene where I was saying where, to me, I just didn't buy that. He's saying stuff like, "I always felt different. Like there's something wrong with me deep down inside," and this is the part where like, man, I just feel really bad about like we know he feels bad and stuff like that, so that tracks. But where is this? Like he's always had these feelings. I thought this was a new thing that was just happening to him. I thought it started 2-3 episodes ago, but he's actually always been like insecure and felt like he didn't belong, and I just didn't get that from his appearances earlier. I mean, maybe we're getting to know him better.
Okay, so I think that it can track as far as like, you know, he just hadn't revealed, or he was keeping it a secret, or it's gotten worse. But I do agree that it seems like in a very short time, not only are we learning about him, but his character, excuse me, like you mentioned, his character has actually changed substantially to be kind of like insecure and nervous. And he was not that at all like 2 episodes ago. So it's a little bit bizarre that like, so either we're to believe that he was hiding this kind of deep insecurity and feeling of being different and something really wrong with him, or
which people do.
New, sure,
but I just was a little confused again by this scene, and I like Jack's scenes. Yeah,
and I like Jack, and I like the dynamic between him and Picard, and I like that he went to Picard to talk to him about this, because I feel like earlier it almost didn't make sense that if he had this syndrome that was supposed to be the same as Picard's, that he wouldn't have gone to him and say, I think we talked about this before.
Yeah, well, by the way, I'm also, when you had aromatic syndrome, did you like start seeing a bunch of red stuff and murdering people dreams? And he doesn't even really references that this here. He's still keeping it a secret, which is annoying.
Sure, but
he gets deeper.
That'd be the first thing you'd do if you knew that your dad had the same syndrome and you're seeing weird stuff and wanting to kill people.
Or if there's some sort of huge conspiracy that's taking over Starfleet and changelings and threatening everyone's life, and it's something to do with you, and that might be relevant information to help them stop the bad things happening, you should probably mention it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I don't really, again, it's one of those things where people are changing and they're having weird conversations that just seem to serve the plot but don't really make sense for the characters or their emotional arcs and things like that.
But I think we should get on from this scene.
Get on with it, Tim. Get on with it.
Sorry to interrupt. But the resolution is Picard's like, wait a second, I've got a plan. And they've got a plan. So now, this is the confusion here, is that we don't know the time between I've got a plan and then the plan happening. But presumably Worf and Raffi have returned.
Has to happen fast. We don't see them.
Because they were like, they're on their way back already. Now,
I don't see
there's a bigger problem here too. Because look at this setting. When I first watched this, I thought they were still at Chintaka, right? But they're not at Chintaka. It said just before here, they're somewhere else deep in the Alpha Quadrant in deep space. So they're not at Chintaka. Now the setup is they make it look like they were in a fight with the Federation ship and they just destroyed the Federation ship, but they were also completely scuttled or completely damaged. So they didn't say this, but I guess what happened is they were like, well, we got to set this up. We can't do it at Chintaka. So they used the tractor beam to will bring a broken Federation ship from the Chintaka junkyard to a completely other part of the Alpha Quadrant to stage this?
I didn't think they had moved from that junkyard.
No, I
or the
didn't. But they
scrapyard.
did. They did.
I didn't pick up on that.
No, I didn't get the screenshot, but they just before now they say elsewhere in the Alpha Quadrant, deep space.
I missed what you said. You cut out there. What?
I'm sorry. They do that thing where they
What
are.
did they say,
They say elsewhere in the Alpha Quadrant, deep space of the Alpha Quadrant. They're somewhere else. They're somewhere
Yeah,
deep
but could
in
that
deep
not
space.
be where? Why is that different from where they were originally, though? Could they just
Because
still
they
be
were in the
referencing the same place?
Chintaka. No, because Chintaka's like a solar system where there's a bunch of stuff. They're now in deep space.
Oh, that doesn't make any sense.
They stage this sort of ruse somewhere else. Now, the plan, as I figured out
I'll
by
believe
watching
you.
the episode a few times, is they stage this situation to make sure like the ship is damaged. They trick them into boarding the ship. Then Jack and Sydney run out and then taunt them and lure them into splitting up on the ship. And then they turn all the force fields and they've trapped the bad guys. So that's the plan, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, it does. It works perfectly because force fields stay strong. They don't just randomly stop working when you punch at them.
Yeah, because we've seen that tons of times. People are always punching force fields, and it doesn't work.
If you could punch at a force field and get it to fail, then why are we shooting phasers and photons at ships? Why aren't we just throwing people with their fists? Poo, 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 poo. And then they're like, shields are failing. One more punch and the shields are down. So that was definitely annoying.
That makes sense.
Couple comments. Let's just do a couple comments there. Tim,
Go ahead.
if you don't mind.
No, fair.
Back to the thing we were talking about, because I'll have to circle back a little bit. Talking about the changes in Jack. Mac thinks that it would make sense if there's a lot of stuff going on in his life, that his attitude would change, and that's fair comment. I think that's possible. I agree with what Steve just said. That's why when you said Worf and Raffi are back, there's no way that they're back, because if they're back, like, why are they not doing any security? Why are they not anywhere near helping with any sort of reinforcements? Why are they not participating?
Because they are secretly beaming onto the Shrike to save Riker.
Okay, good point. Yeah, that's actually, yeah. That's probably... what do you think of that, Steve?
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
All right, so...
No, but that does make sense. It makes sense, sorry. I think it does make sense that Worf and Raffi did come back, or maybe whatever. And
it must have taken hours to set this up,
ahead.
which would be hours into the 36 hours they have left. So maybe that's why they don't mention time, because they don't actually want to deal with that.
No, they can't. They can't.
So she has a scanner on the ship and says, "Oh, they're all scattered and in danger. They're sitting ducks." So she's falling for the ruse. There's a bunch of people. There's a bunch of people on the Titan.
She appears to be falling for the ruse.
She does.
There's
the guy. And there's the tall one. The tall one we keep seeing. He keeps standing up too. All the other ones are easy to kill, but he comes back up.
He can't be killed. Some other people were talking about how these are like the bird. They call them like the bird aliens or something.
Yeah.
They do kind of look like birds. I hadn't thought of it that way.
No, one of the theories that
they're just masks, but
yeah, well, one of the theories I had early on, because we're talking about COVID and stuff. They look kind of like those plague doctor masks that were like big bird beaks. People thought maybe they were like plague survivors. No, they're just changelings, and they were too lazy to do makeup, so they have masks. I mean, that's
makeup, and also paying the actors more money for like appearing on. There must be a pay scale thing.
Well, we've seen like 10 die, and there's only 9 original ones. She must get more of them, but we've already seen like 10 die.
That was the thing Steve and I were talking about, because I was thinking, how many actually boarded the ship? Because originally, you don't see that many.
It's so confusing. Yeah, there's 4, and then they're all trapped, and then they're on the bridge, and that's why I found this to be just like that hide and seek episode that was a Scooby-Doo all over the place. Like,
yeah, people were moving around weird. Didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense. Well, not that it didn't make sense. It wasn't well directed so that we understood what was going on. We're the viewer. Tell us a story.
I'm the viewer. You're not. I am.
So they come onto the ship though. They're at the hallway and they're like, haha, I'm the bad guy. Do I have any notes about it? Because she says so. And then Jack comes up and he's like, hey, haha, he's gonna sort of lure them in. But there's an important line here, because we get some hints here about Jack. So Vadic says she wants to take him to a better place. And then she says, it'll be so much better to show you than to tell you.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's almost exactly what the founder leader said to Odo, referring to the link. And I picked up on that right away. Like, so right at this point, I'm like, okay, he must be, like, I already thought he was a changeling or somehow a changeling. And to me, that's straight changeling stuff, right? That's pretty on point for changeling.
It seems to be, but I think maybe more misdirection, because what would that mean for? Is he Picard and Beverly's son? Is he not? Is he a changeling? Does he have?
He could be a changeling switch. So if you Google Wikipedia, if you Google what changeling means,
Google Wikipedia.
If you Google Wikipedia, get what changeling means. It's like a changeling is the sort of like the traditional folk tale or urban folk myth that a baby's being switched with changelings. You've heard this before?
Okay, that's where that came from.
Yeah,
sure,
that's what a changeling is. Maybe he was switched.
I'm not going to like it if he's not actually Picard's kid, though.
I mean, that's the problem. And if you Google it, you get Proteus, a figure from Greek mythology who's very changeling-like, which is referenced.
Wouldn't Beverly know if she had given birth to this kid?
Yeah, you think, but I still think Beverly could be evil. Steve has a good point.
No, yeah, I know.
Steve says, why would he put Sydney at risk to get Geordi on their side, but immediately put Sydney at risk despite being in the pile? So that's the other thing that's sort of coming in this scene, is that the two people that are sent down to lure Vadic into the ship and trap her to be in like the most dangerous situation, basically the bait, is Jack. Makes sense. He's the one they want. And Sydney, who's the pilot and Geordi's daughter. And there's a bunch of security guards on the bridge. But at the same time, I'm okay with that because we want to see scenes. We want to see Sydney. We care more about Sydney than some random security guy. Worf and Raffi busy somewhere else. So maybe she was a track star, and there's a scene we didn't see where Geordi's like, "No way, we're not going to risk your life." And then Sydney, "Remember, I'm a track star. I'm super fast, and you've got to trust me. That's part of our arc as a father, as a daughter and father, for you to trust me and let me get out and do missions and stuff." And then Geordi's like, "Okay, I trust you, but I'll make sure not to let Lore free or next to the button that makes all the bad stuff happen." Anyway, that scene could have happened, and it would make sense.
Oh man, my Skype just completely disappeared for a second. So hopefully people can still hear me. And
I think we screwed up for a second. Anyway, we're just going on and on about Sydney, but I'm okay that Sydney's there because we need Sydney. We need Sydney, and it's important later on because we need the dynamic with Sydney and Jack. Right?
Sure, but it's still fair to say that if they wanted that to play better, oh look how small I am.
Just keep talking. I'll do.
If they wanted that to play better, I think I'm fixed already. If they wanted that to play better, a nice little solution would have been maybe make Geordi less like I think with writing you can just think of like A, B, C, and D, and if one leading to the other, fix one of them a little bit. And I think Geordi being so cautious about Sydney, and then in the next episode not caring at all about her being in the most dangerous situation without even blinking an eye and saying, "Hey, maybe send someone else." I think that's the issue. So
no, you're right.
Could have at least just
and it makes backwards sense because whoever's there is the one that Jack has to link with, and she's the one that Jack's linking with.
Yeah. So thanks, Steve. He says he can.
They needed a scene for that.
That's good. Yeah. So. But I do like the dynamic between Sydney and Jack, and I didn't mind them being the ones trying to set this up. It was annoying, the whole...
But they pull it off.
Force fields. And then,
they totally do it.
They don't. They fail.
Well, they get stuck inside the force fields themselves, but it works because they got them all separated somehow in different force fields.
But to circle back to what we said earlier, they didn't connect lore. So clearly lore can't have any influence on the force fields or on them being able to beam out of between the force fields, right, Tim?
Yeah, because just like at Daystrom Institute, if you had a really unstable, super evil android, you'd never connect them to the security system of Starfleet's most important and dangerous stuff. You'd never do that.
And so they didn't, right?
Yeah, we're being sarcastic. Yeah, so so that's what we start seeing is they're hanging out. Geordi's hanging out with Data, and there's this. I like the thing I liked in this episode was basically LeVar alone, but I like the direction framing in this. It's kind of awkward, but they basically leave Data Lore in another room, and then they come out, and then it creates this sort of situation where Data and Lore is like on this other side of this window, and that's how they're like arguing.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's this scene you can tell here, but it's through that window, and you can see Data's reflection. And I thought visually that it worked.
Yeah,
and he just
it didn't not work.
Lore's free, and he's threatening them already. I really, really strongly disliked this.
Tell me how you really feel.
The thing is that I feel like, well, first of all, the excuse that Geordi gives is that Lore loves chaos. That's why he's doing this.
Yeah.
No,
right.
Lore thinks he's superior to everyone. That's why he's evil. And it's implied there's a deep-rooted insecurity of Lore over his daddy issues, and he feels rejected by his dad and rejected by the colonists. But ultimately, there's the conflict between his rejection and his superiority, and that's why he's evil. It's nothing to do with him being crazy. And I feel like it would have been so much cooler for there to be a dynamic where there's Lore, it's Data, they know they can't trust him, they know he's evil, but they have to work with him because he knows stuff, so they have to help him, and he's actually really good at knowing stuff and helping them, and he's like technically capable and all this stuff. So they have to, one of those situations, kind of like Loki, you know how Loki was used in the Marvel movies and stuff, where they have to work with him, but really, ultimately, they can't really trust him, even though he's Data sometimes. But from his perspective, he's a mastermind. He's like 5-6 steps ahead of everyone. He's manipulating everyone to his own ends. He can help them, but ultimately he's going to sort of outsmart everyone. Like that, some version of that would have been way cooler, I think, than just, I'm crazy.
I agree with that. And the reason why he was just, I'm crazy, is because it made a much easier plot device. They didn't care about doing Lore service and making him Lore. They just cared about making a problem for Geordi and Sydney and Jack and the crew so that Vadic could win. So they just were like, well, we've got Data Lore. So then for this very moment, Lore is going to like overpower Data and make sure that they can't, and they were like, I feel like the writers were probably like, that'll be so cool. Because like Lore is like evil, right? And it makes sense. But I agree with you that it doesn't do justice for Lore and his character and what his real motivations are and why he does the things that he does. It also doesn't do justice to
Spiner.
Data and the fact, and Spiner, but Data and Lore are sharing this mind, and I understand that Lore is fighting Data, but Data's no slouch. Like I don't like the idea that Data would just kind of be like, oh, sorry, I lost in this moment, and Lore won, and like.
And it's also the dumbest version of sort of a bicameral mind dynamic that actually is super interesting and interesting to explore. A character that was actually a synthesis between Data and Lore would be interesting. This isn't.
Yeah. Well, and so here's the thing. Unfortunately, what's going on with the show and often happening with the show is that they don't explore. They don't have time, but they do have time.
Well, they had 9 extra minutes that they cut this episode.
Yeah, so who knows what that was? But I guess what I mean is fundamentally in the writing process, not even just in the per episode time, but like it just sometimes feels like they're thinking, okay, well, Vadic's got, like, they have goals. Vadic's got to get on the ship. Vadic has to take over the ship. Data's here. Well, Data has 2 brains, Data and Lore, but nothing's really given the time it deserves to really be explored in the way that and that's where I miss the episodic element of Star Trek, where it was episodic and where every episode really in depth explored an idea, and we were able to really like learn. And if we had had an episode of TNG where Data and Lore were one, then we would have really found out like what that's like. But this doesn't do justice to it because it's literally like he's just a plot device. He's just a friggin' plot device.
Yeah, that's it. He's just a plot device, and it hurts. It
hurt.
It hurt me.
And it's still hurting. And it's still hurting.
And then the other thing that's going on in this, the other sort of main plot is that it's called Dominion. The episode's called Dominion, so something has to be about the Dominion. They did successfully trap Vadic in sickbay. It's sickbay, but all the tables are gone. I was a little confused. But they get her in a force field, and they were like, "We've got you."
Yeah.
And
got you.
And
try to get away now.
Basically, she's like, "What do you want from Jack?" And she's like, "I don't know that." And
is she that nonchalant about it?
Well, no, because there's a line that she says here: "He's not for me. We could bond over that, since he was never really for you either."
Yeah,
that's a weird line. I don't know what that means.
It's a weird line.
And then they sort of talk about like,
yeah.
They sort of touching on her backstory, and there's a line here too that Vadic says, "Do not compare the atrocities committed by your kind to the warfare of my kind," which is nonsense. That's not how the war was portrayed in Deep Space Nine. The Dominion were a brutal, genocidal race that used bioweapons left and right, that were worse than the Cardassians, that used genetically engineered soldiers that they forced to fight and kept addicted to drugs chemically, that were like there wasn't a moral ambiguity between the Federation and the Dominion. There wasn't any moral equivalence. There wasn't any atrocities. I know that the Starfleet's incompetent, like Starfleet's evil now, but just from the outgo, I just don't see like from her, I don't understand even her perspective of a criticism of Starfleet in the context of the Dominion War. That's just not the Dominion War that was portrayed for us.
Right.
And they do touch on a few things, but yeah.
Could it be that what she's referring to, though, is what her experience was, not necessarily the war itself? But her experience during the war was that she was in a lab being tortured, right?
Why don't you talk about that? Why don't you, if you remember the scene? So she's like, "I'm going to tell you my backstory." Oh, sorry. No, she doesn't tell the backstory yet.
I like how you like show the red eyes and then apologize.
Yeah, well, I thought there was going to be a backstory, but there's a scene first between just when we first sort of get the touches of the red eyes and the connection between him, what's going on with them. So they're sort of still trapped in.
Talk about that then?
Yeah. I don't think there's...
I'll talk about that.
I think nothing new happens here. We'll get back to it, I think. So this is the flashback.
But when the eyes start turning red, I think it's important because that's when he starts to like hear her thoughts, but then she's realizing that something weird's going on.
That does happen in this scene, but then there's another scene where it happens again, and he like takes control of her. So we can.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's talk about that scene. Yeah. Let's get right into the. So this is a flashback of Daystrom Institute, which looks the same.
Oh.
And then we see her backstory.
Yeah, so look, Vadic with a needle, but this is not Vadic because this is the person that Vadic took the likeness of, who happened to also be her torturer and her captor, who was a member of Starfleet.
She's not wearing a Starfleet uniform, but she's at least working at Daystrom Institute. So she's a scientist at Daystrom.
She didn't like how it fit.
Yeah, you need a lab coat. She's wearing a lab coat.
Anyway, so we're beat over the head in this series of scenes with like this torture that was going on and how dark and scary and terrible, and it was like, and it just goes on and on and on where Vadic talks about it, and it's like, but the thing from a filmmaker standpoint, myself being someone who's like tried to make some films and worked on some stuff through like video, how you convey something. I kind of felt bad because like they're like, okay, they're torturing changelings, but like changelings are kind of like just goo on a plate. So like it kept showing her like injecting liquid into goo and then like poking at goo with like a sharp thing and like cutting goo and then like, so I guess, and I don't know if maybe when they shot it and then they were editing it, they realized like it doesn't really read as torture. It just reads as like someone friggin' with goo. We get obviously, like we understand that these are changelings, and that, but I guess.
And she's whistling really creepily, right? The whistling's what makes it scary.
Whistling always, like they always use whistling as like a cue for evil, especially when it's like everything else is quiet and you just hear whistling in the distance. It's like it's a creepy thing. There's a lot of whistling in this season of Picard, actually.
There is. This scene, we never see it in Deep Space Nine, but we hear it described a couple times. Odo was originally found by Morapol, or he was actually originally found by the Cardassians, I think, and he was given to Morapol's lab to sort of study. And he sort of put him in, like, scanned him and put him in things and was kind of didn't know what he was, but this is like an evil version of what Morapol did to Odo, to get Odo to sort of react and have form. And they sort of, and Odo was sort of like had issues with that, but ultimately sort of came to terms with it and saw him as sort of a father figure.
Sure. So anyway, it's revealed that there was 8 of them, 8 changelings that were being, I think
she says 9 other ones, so maybe 10 in all.
Something like that. Yeah. It's between 7 and 10. And
Project Proteus.
Maybe there was 9 and she was 7 of 9. But so yeah, they're whistling is creepy, full stop, Max says. Yeah, fair enough. So the torture, they really like wanted Vadic to like sell that like this was like terrible, and I think it just, for some reason the scene seemed to go on for a long time. I kind of like zoned out, and then I was like, oh, we're still watching her talk about this. I just didn't think it was really necessary. They could have used maybe the episode to convey some other stuff, because it was pretty. It's a pretty easy sell. Like you say, I was tortured by this doctor. She's the reason why we as changelings now are able to be more, to keep form longer and do all the special things we can do now. A couple important things in this scene. One is that Beverly realizes that the element that this, and actually this is Vadic that gives this away.
That's later on, at least as far as the flashback scene.
Well, anyway, I can still, it's an important element that gets found out, that basically there's a way that she can now track the changelings through this, like, and if it was a later scene, it's still in this same, through the
it's the information part created. I had some more sort of. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and becomes Vadic, takes this scientist, it like stabs her through the shoulder, and she like barely reacts to it. She's just kind of like, oh, and looks like she's sleeping. I didn't understand that. I don't know if it was because they just didn't want to.
The first time I saw it, I thought that Vadic's like enveloped her body and became her, but that isn't what happened. Right. She killed her with a spike.
Because you could still see the changeling behind the original doctor. And I guess to me it's like you could come up with some plot reason or what was really going on there, but really I think it just wasn't executed well.
No, it was awkwardly done. But there's some broader world building stuff that I found confusing. So first of all, Vadic never had the changeling virus, the mutagenic virus that Section 31 made and sort of got infected through Odo, infected the Great Link. She was here instead. She said she was a prisoner of war, so she was there during the war. There's sort of 2 places that she could have come from. There's the original 100 that Odo was a member of, but it sounds like she was a prisoner of war. So she must have been an agent founder, an agent changeling who was deep undercover in Starfleet. Remember, there was a few of those in the earlier episodes of Deep Space Nine where there were changelings undercover at Starfleet, at Earth, messing stuff up, and also there was Klingon ones, there's Martok, and presumably there was other ones, the Romulans and stuff like that. They were all over the Alpha Quadrant. So those 10 must have been deep cover agents that were already working undercover and then were captured by Starfleet. Because otherwise there weren't any other changelings just traveling around that could be captured. So she was already a prisoner of war who was doing that.
Okay.
But my point is that, to me, that's a lot less a sympathetic backstory than if she was one of the original innocent hunterants who was just being tortured. She was captured as an enemy agent, is what I'm saying.
Okay, sure, but I still think like torturing a species to the point where they're like, changes their
physiology.
Who they are.
Yeah, no, I mean it clearly it was being portrayed as torture, but also the motivations that they're sort of ascribing here, which again I guess will be Starfleet doing this on some level, or at least the Federation, is she said to spread chaos as
to make
perfect
spies.
deep agents. I think I have the quote. Perfect, undetectable spies able to drop into any species to create chaos. But the way Deep Space Nine was fantastic at sort of exploring the idea of what happens to the ideal Federation when they're forced to face genocidal war, and how do they compromise their ideals, like in the Pale Moonlight, or not the Federation, but in Necessary Evil. Lots of great Deep Space Nine arcs and episodes, But the framing of that was the bad guys that the Federation was dealing with are the Borg and the Dominion. There's no dynamic where people in the Federation are like, we need to spread chaos amongst any other group other than the Borg. Their real threats are the Borg and the Dominion. So I don't really know what the goal was of Project Proteus, other than for them to go back and pretend to be Vorta or pretend to be Borg. Like the Federation wanted.
It was to create a.
Sorry.
I have the answer, Tim. Well, it was to create a plot for season 3 of Star Trek Picard.
I mean, fair. I just might say is at the end of the day, I just don't really buy the backstory, and part of it is that they're trying to set up that Starfleet is evil now, or not trustworthy, or that Section 31's a bigger deal now. Which, okay, they haven't explained why that is or how that came to be. But it's hard for me to retcon the story that was done better 23, 24 years ago on Deep Space Nine in the Dominion War, because that had a different story that had different motivations, where it actually was pretty shocking what Sisko was willing to do. But we actually kind of believed
that's
him.
fair.
And I didn't buy this.
I think part of it, I think, and I know that DS9 was one of the first Star Treks that really dealt with more longer story arcs instead of just like episodic, and there was a lot going on, and they did a really good job of it. And but I do think also you're given, how many episodes was a season of DS9?
26.
So think about that compared to 10 episodes of Picard season 3, and on top of trying to deal with like changelings and their motivation, they're also trying to deal with Picard and his newfound son, and Riker and George. Like, so I just think in some ways, like, they can't do justice to a lot of the stuff. They just don't have the time. They don't have the time. They don't have, which I completely relate to your problems. Like, I think that that's fair to have, and I think that it's unfortunate. I don't know how else. I think what happened was they were kind of like, okay, who are the baddies going to be in season 3 of Picard? Well, we've done the Borg and we've done Q. Maybe it could be changelings.
According to some interviews and tweets, Metalis has said it was almost the bug aliens from Conspiracy.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Oh, yeah. Watch! You're starting to make noise again with your mic.
I'll try to move my mic away from my beard. I think it's my beard that does.
I think it's on your right side there. Yeah.
When it rubs my beard. Yeah. So bearded bastard. Stephen says, I sort of read it as that she was Section 31, may have been involved in developing the virus. Oh, that's a good point.
Because
Yeah,
Section 31 made the virus, and
right. So
so
that
yeah,
that could have been
yeah, she must
pre-virus.
have. They must have been Section 31. Anyway, but that's the backstory, and she did suffer horrors.
She did suffer. Yeah, I mean it's clear.
Um,
She made it very clear.
there was a scene after this that you were just before I sort of took us back. You were just sort of referencing that they do this thing. So this is the part of the episode where it it finally started to derail for me. They tried to sort of bring in this theme of prisoners of war and how you handle tortures, and the sort of the classic cliche that they sort of try. I think they're trying to touch on is the idea of the sort of the trolley situation where you have a terrorist and there's a bomb that's going to go off that's going to kill a bunch of people in an hour. And what do you do? Are you willing to try to torture the terrorist to get the information? That never really tracks to real life. But so they're trying to do that sort of dynamic here. Like, how are we going to compromise our ethics now that we have her? Right? That's what they're saying. There's a weird line.
Yes, I agree.
There's a weird line that Beverly says here too. That Crusher says. Crusher refers to the fact that Vadic took the face of her torturer, which is not something that Vadic said.
Right. So how did they know that?
How did was she watch? She must have been watching the flashback that we were watching, because Vadic definitely did not say that. Because I rewatched this scene like several times. So
that's such a good point. That's super funny.
So confusing, but so Crusher knows what she was saying. But then they try to do this ethics debate. The problem is there's literally no ask. There's no torture. There's nothing. They're just like, should we just kill her now? So why would they? Yeah. Why would they kill her? So the subtext is that it's to protect Jack somehow. But why would killing Vadic isn't going to protect Jack? There's an entire Starfleet of changelings that want Jack. So her being captured, killing her doesn't stop Jack. The only reason to kill her right away is if they knew that she was about to escape, and they have no reason to think that at this point. There's no ask. There's no like, we've got to get the information from her or else a bunch of people are die, or we've got to get this information from her right away or else Jack is going to die. There's literally no argument here. And then on top of that, talk about how she was tortured. There's this really weird dynamic too, where past Star Trek have done this a lot of times. I know I'm piling on things quickly, but basically there's this thing about they do in this scene where they're like 2 meters behind her, and they talk in their regular voice, but sort of lean into each other, like they're talking amongst themselves. And Beverly even says, she's too confident. She must know something about, or she must have a plan to get out of here, which doesn't track or make any sense. And she obviously can hear them. And I don't understand whether this is supposed to be ridiculous, or this is supposed to be part of their plan. Like Picard's plan was to make Vadic feel like she was winning by saying, oh, she's actually one step ahead of us, in a whisper that she could obviously hear. Like, nothing about this scene worked, is what I'm saying. Can you explain
so I thought, I went through that a couple times, like as far as, does she hear them? If she does hear them, are they messing with her by talking in a way that she can hear? I don't know. I would default back to, I don't think she could hear them. I think she just kind of was like looking as if she could hear, but I don't think she could, because it wouldn't make any sense. And this isn't just Star Trek that does this. Lots of television shows do this slightly further away and then have like important conversations about things that they don't want someone to hear. So yeah, I don't think that she could hear them. Now I totally, you can tell something doesn't work well when you feel like you have to rewatch an episode just to pick up on what was happening. And this scene, when they talked about killing her, like I knew that's what was going on, but it was too short. It was too quick for them to really deal with the moral dilemma. Like, it didn't feel like they were dealing with a moral dilemma. It didn't feel like they were, and they didn't address it well. Like, they didn't kind of look at the different avenues of why it would be good or bad. They just kind of, like you said, they were like, should we just kill her now? And I see I'm resizing, sorry. Sorry, everyone. I resize once in a while. Can you still hear me? Hopefully you can hear me.
I can hear you, but...
yeah, what I look like I'm in some sort of weird void. Like the bottom half of myself is missing. Oh, now I've grown in size. I'm having a good time here. Yeah, so I didn't like the way they dealt with that. Again, that's the kind of thing that TNG would have taken 15 minutes to deal with, or 20, not 3 minutes, while they go like stand at the side of the room and say like, should we kill her? It just doesn't do it justice. Like something that powerful and that important. And then the whole like, she seems too confident, she seems too calm, whatever it was.
Sorry.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you. She seems too confident, and like I didn't understand the why.
You're just resizing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to resize, and I'm not doing well. I didn't understand why Beverly was saying things like that. I didn't understand like the basics of the argument.
No, it felt like they knew things we as an audience didn't know, and I didn't know why they knew those things. They never explained. Like, it just seemed like they were like, she's up to something. Well, why do we? And then I wasn't sure if it was connected to lore, because lore seemed to, like, were they working together at one moment? I thought maybe they were, but like they weren't.
They couldn't have been.
I'm just like watching the stream, and I can see that it was like messing up at one point. But anyway, like, so this scene really, it did lead to.
And this was meant to be the climax of the episode, I think, right? This was supposed to be the main conflict.
Yeah, and then kind of coming face to face with Vadic, and the fact that she wants their child, and they're like, and I think that's what they were trying to do too, is this idea that like they're the parents and they're trying to decide, should we just kill this person because she wants to harm our child? But they didn't. It just wasn't dealt with well enough. And then, like you said, the whole like sneaky Scooby-Doo, like everyone runs around and everyone's everywhere in the ship, but then everyone's not where.
Are they all in the same?
People just showed up.
We didn't see anyone take the turbo lifts, so they're all in the same level, and that's why they sort of lured her to this location in sickbay, because it's on the same level as where they docked the ship when they went on.
I don't know about the levels. I think maybe you're thinking too much about that one. I don't think they were thinking about levels. I think it's literally just like, now we're alone with Vadic. Where's the rest of the security? Now we're not alone with Vadic. Now she's on the bridge.
But in the meantime of this dynamic happening, there's an intense scene between Geordi and Data, Geordi and Lore, and there's some great lines that I like LeVar, and LeVar does a good performance. And remember I was saying the last episode what I really wanted was, I really missed the Data and Geordi. We didn't see enough of that in the movies, and we finally have Geordi saying that like, you made me a better person, and it was horrible like when you died, and I had to like use my memory of you to overcome that. And like I just thought I liked that. It was good, and it was, I guess, the right thing you had to say to someone, like to try to connect with Data. Like I said, I didn't like the dynamic with the plot object that Data Lore has become, but I liked LeVar Burton's performance.
Well, yeah, in any other episode, if the episode was constructed better and this scene had a good lead up and it made sense that way, then this would be a powerful, like, it's probably the best part of the episode was the dynamic of, mostly LeVar Burton and his performance. I mean, his acting was like amazing, and he like nailed that performance, and it was very emotional. But it's hard watching that scene when he's saying it to like Lore, who's kind of laughing at him the whole time. Like, I don't know, like knowing that Data's in there, and I get that it's supposed to be dramatic, but at the same time, like, we've waited all this time for Geordi and Data to be like face to face again, and when they are, like, it's like Lore's smirking at him the whole time. He's saying like, "You changed me, Data, and you're like my best friend," and like the kind of scene that would like bring tears to your eyes, but you're also like watching Lore kind of being like, this is annoying that Lore is just, evil and doing stupid things because they needed him to do it for the plot.
And back here, so they decide not to shoot her with the phaser. Steve has a great point.
After he holds it.
Can she shapeshift to super hearing? She should be able to hear everything on the ship, or maybe she doesn't have ears.
Yeah.
he was joking.
Steve,
he was joking, but
well, I was talking to Steve about like Vadic, and I think he kind of is like under the, like, one of those people that's like, if she's a shapeshifter, she should be able to just like, she can be basically anything. So,
but she's got different changeling rules for Robertson. And she said something interesting about like the trade to give her powers was a lot of pain, and they shortened their life because usually a changeling basically lives forever in the link. So she's gonna die.
Yeah,
So I mean, she's gonna die by the end of the season, of course. And she also said that she was the
and
only
everyone
person who
follows.
could turn other people into those other changelings. Sorry, she could turn other regular changelings into those changelings, and she did that to the first 9.
Yeah, we learned
But
that.
we've already seen more than 9.
Yeah.
We've already seen like about 9 die. So she must have re-entered the link in the Gamma Quadrant and been like, "Hey, I'm gonna help turn some of
Or
you."
just, I mean, at some point she met up with lots of changelings and
Yeah.
gave them this
And
ability,
the flashback happened
and they
23
all
years
wanted to
ago
do it.
during the war. So, which it's always really awkward to reference because you have to subtly address the fact that Jack must have been born before Star Trek Nemesis. So it's hard to mention the time frame of anything from 23, 24 years ago. But that's when it would have happened.
Yeah.
And they cut back to
So
the
he's
scenes
still,
with that sort of the
and
wall
that's the
between the
thing.
two,
Like,
the glass between the two.
oh, and it felt very Spock and um,
Yeah,
oh my goodness,
Kirk in Wrath of Khan at
Kirk.
the end, like my friend like trying to touch, but there's a you're back to normal. I gotta fix you.
Sorry, I'm just like
Don't
gliding
don't
over this way.
don't glide. I'll fix.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it felt like that. It also felt like when they did the same thing in, gosh,
This
one
is
of the new,
horrible.
the new, one
Into
of the new Star Trek.
darkness.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the one character behind the glass, the other character, telling them something really emotional, but Laura's just kind of laughing at him the whole time. But he's still trying to appeal to him, and part of in this situation why he is because he knows Sydney is in like huge danger. So now Geordi, who was trying to protect her in the last episode and didn't want her to even be on this ship, is like,
He's kicking himself for giving Laura the "make everything bad happen" button.
don't do that, don't do that. We said don't do that. Well,
Don't do
also,
it.
not that Alton's necessarily a good guy, but he basically knowingly messed up Data and turned him into Tuvix.
Oh, Alton Soon.
I
Yeah,
don't think that was
It's.
intention.
I mean, they said in the last episode clearly that this has made Data even more human. But humans don't have 2 androids in their heads fighting, being
You
chaotic.
don't, Tim?
Maybe that is a good description of humanity. Maybe that is exactly what humans are: 2 androids in one head arguing.
Well, I do understand like how that could work if
Hmm.
Lore had emotion and also was evil. Like every person kind of has like a yin and a yang, a good and a bad. And if they could kind of come into balance together, maybe it would be like the the super data.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I actually agree and think that would be a super interesting story to tell. And maybe they're gonna still do it. Presumably, it's just in this episode
Yeah.
it was not. So
It'll
anyway,
be quick. It'll be
I think because the Data sort of comes out at one point, but it's not before Lore presses the button, and they are like, "Oh wait, we should have shot her." Now, what bugs me about this scene is that suddenly she has plot armor. Every other changeling super easy to shoot, super easy to kill, but she's got the plot armor, and she jumps into the hole that was on the ceiling, and they still
and they
can't
shoot
shoot
at her
her.
like a bunch.
Yeah,
Doesn't do
but
anything. Yeah, she
she's
gets away.
fine. She's fine.
No, no, she good. She good.
She good.
She gets away.
But also yeah, so she gets away. Then the force field's down, and Sydney and Jack, who were like just they were in like a 3-way force field where all the bad guys are around them. The force fields are down. The bad guys are attacking, and Sydney's like, "What are you doing?" And he says that thing's like, "Oh, why is he looking at me like that?" Again, not recognizing the red eyes. She doesn't see the red eyes, and
Then her eyes.
her eyes turn red, and he can control her. And there's a really dark, blurry fight sequence.
Right, with the giant
Yeah, the big one.
changeling, bird changeling, whatever he is. The big one, yeah. And I don't know, like, I don't mind in some ways the dynamic here, the idea of him, for whatever reason, having this telepathy. And I just hope it's explained well. I hope it's not just since and I think you're probably right about this. The red eyes thing just will never be explained, and they'll just be like, "Oh no, it was this," and we won't know why specifically. It's just
No,
just is.
it does need to be edited later. I think
So
because changelings. So there is an episode of Deep Space Nine where some accident happens and and then Odo gets zapped by some electricity, and then he tries to link. Like it triggers his link ability, but the only people who are around are just like the Dax and Cisco and a couple of crew members, and he sort of telepathically links with them and tells them like a story. So there is already this idea that changelings could telepathically link with non-changelings. So that's what I was thinking. Because I still think
you still think the whole thing with Jack is just that he's just changeling DNA or changeling
and that
blood.
He's trying to link with her, and that Vadic earlier was referring to the link. But there is a problem. It's in the previous version. It's in this scene, but the previous one of this scene. One of the masked goons says to Jack, and this is the masked goon. He says, "How will it feel when she dies for you, solid?" So at least the masked goon, and I'm pretty sure it was the big guy, thinks that Jack is a solid. So that contradicts everything.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if that was just a line that was written independently of a rewrite where they decided what Jack was, or if that's an important clue. Like, I just don't know what to make of that. But the goon thinks he's a solid because he outright calls him.
I still don't think Jack's a changeling. If anything, he might have some changeling DNA in him.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what I mean more so, that he's a changeling. I don't think he's a full changeling, maybe.
Yeah, so he would still be technically a solid, but maybe has some DNA that is changeling DNA. But I don't even really think that. I think it's probably... I think with the body of Picard and then Jack, I think it does have something... Or at least I think maybe I'm just hopeful that it has something to do with nanites and the Borg, because I think that's more interesting. I don't understand the telepathy.
Borg don't telepathy.
Telepathy's a bit weird.
This isn't a Borg thing.
No, but they do communicate as a hive mind.
They communicate as a hive mind, but they don't control someone else and make their eyes turn red. They definitely don't do that.
But yeah,
they'd be
also,
green.
I don't know
they'd
how
be green eyes.
Like he and Picard should be able to talk telepathically if they had nanites, but there's no reason why they'd be able to talk to Sydney, because she was never assimilated, so that doesn't make any sense.
Well,
I mean, Jack wasn't either.
If there was a simulation connection, wouldn't Seven have connected on it? She's got one of those. She's got one of those things in her brain. The Borg Vignica Borg. I forget what it's called, but there's the Borg technology that makes all the Borg connect. She still has one in her brain.
Yeah, but that's again. I think you're thinking like I don't think they would worry about like but Seven would hear it or Seven would connect. Like I just don't think that would be in the writer's room. I don't think they'd go there. I think they do control somebody else and make some eyes turn red. Who does, Steve? Who are you talking about? But needs the machines, I guess. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. He's still talking about the Borg. The machines they plug into.
Oh, the things.
It's just more interesting if it's Borg related because, and it's
but
also more interesting
the Borg,
if somehow...
and then they did the Borg again, and they. I don't know. I suppose I've been surprised how dismissive this season has been of past seasons. So maybe they do bring them. Maybe
they don't care about. Past seasons didn't exist, and one of the coolest characters and coolest situations for Picard was always Locutus, and
yeah, I mean Locutus. That's the thing.
Well, that's what I just hope. But I just don't think it's going to be that either. But I was hoping that when they took his body, that they were going to try to, create Locutus again, or make like a version of Locutus, and then they needed the sun to like blah blah blah. But no, I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be something weird. It's going to be a turbo lift malfunction.
Yeah. So they cut back and forth with the tense scene. So Geordi's pretty sad about bad stuff happening.
That's your commentary on that one. Geordi's pretty sad.
But Data Lore's like, I don't care. And they connect at some point. I think Data sort of comes out.
That whole episode.
But But Data comes out after.
Um,
So after Laura already pressed the button
yeah,
that turned off the force field, Data comes and he's like, "It's okay, I'm here for now, Geordi, and I'm your friend." I don't remember what he says.
that's probably what he said, Tim. I'm here and I'm your friend. I think that again, that even just feels it's annoying that Data was gone just long enough for like shit to hit the fan, and then he's like, "Well, I'm back now." Like, why is there a certain time period that he's not there? Why does he come back? Like, but it's all just plot related.
It's just
So
arbitrary. And then we cut back to these guys, and basically Sydney's really freaked out about that whole thing because they defeated she kung fu'd the bad guys because
and shot him a bunch,
and shot him a
but he
bunch.
didn't die. He doesn't
Yeah,
die.
no,
That
he
one.
doesn't die. The big one doesn't die, which I guess makes sense. He's stronger than the other ones, but he seemed to have
No,
died
I
at the
think
time. But then later on, he
okay,
gets back
wait.
up.
I have a theory. I have a theory. So you know when children try to get into a restricted movie and they like stand on each other's shoulders in a big trench coat? I think he's like three changelings.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think he's like
Major
more than
recall.
one.
Um,
So that's why he's hard to
no,
kill.
and a
'Cause you
changeling
can
could
shoot
do
him.
that even better. One changeling does the legs, the other changeling actually does the arms, and it would actually work.
Yeah,
No, I think
right.
you
So
got
he's like
it.
he's almost invincible. He's basically like you because if you shoot him anywhere in particular, it's just like going to hit a changeling's like toe.
Exactly. And
Anyway, so he's many changelings in a trench coat.
yeah, that adds up.
Uh,
Then we cut back to
saying many
them,
things.
and this is where they discover, hey, that plumonium. I forget what it was called, but basically they're like, oh, they use that
Element
plumonium to force them to have the abilities. They must still have that. We can use that to find them. And then they're like, oh, we found them. We can see them. And then they're like, oh no, they're actually coming to take over the bridge. But they do find them. They can detect them now. So that's what this scene is. Them
Yeah, and that
detecting
happened
the
really
changelings.
fast. That was like a really fast, like,
But it was
figure
too.
out and make
It was
it
really
move.
fast, and then it also was too slow to do anything about what was
Well, that's
happening.
true. Yeah,
Because
but
then suddenly
although
there's
they will
like
now be able to use this in the future.
dozens of them. Oh, there's a scene I didn't have a good shot of, but when the changelings come up or are attacking the bridge, Shaw runs out with two security guards. There's a few security guards on the bridge, and those two security guards get killed, and Shaw gets beat up. They redshirted a couple security guards with Shaw in a scene,
Hmm.
and
That's okay.
and there's tons of them
You
up
got to have some
here.
red shirts.
I don't know. Maybe the one who's the two on in the coat.
Yeah,
trench
he's
coat,
split.
He's split into multiple ones, and that's why there's so many on the bridge now. It all
There he
fits.
is.
It all fits. Anyway, so she's
Makes
like,
sense.
"I'm the captain now of the Titan."
Yeah, and it was very Gargamel. This was another thing where it was like almost too heavy-handed evil. Like she had to
Yeah.
just kind of be like, "I'm on the bridge, and I'm evil, and I'm evil. I'm really evil on the bridge."
And she ends the episode saying, "And now it's time," referring to Jack. "It's time for you to learn who you truly are." Then it cuts.
So
A little annoying.
probably,
Probably
yeah.
they won't
So
reference this at all in the next episode, and Jack and Vatic won't even be in it.
they'll be off. Where was the place Worf was?
Exocorp? They'll be like,
Yeah, that's where
Vatic
they'll
and
be.
Jack are with the Exocorp, but they're on their way back now.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I think that's to me that's also just really lazy writing. So to literally have a character say, I shouldn't like almost literally find out next time on Star Trek Picard. Like, I don't like that she said, and now it's time you find out who you really are, and then cut to credits. Like, there's ways you can do that. You can end an episode on a cliffhanger without having the character directly reference the cliffhanger. Like,
Yeah, and
I don't know. It
just the pacing and the way they set it up in this whole episode, I was just eye roll, a lot of eye roll.
yeah. A lot of eye roll. So I just have to quickly swing back on a couple Steve comments because he's writing a book here for us. I'll try to condense it. He's basically saying he doesn't see why it couldn't be Borg because there's times where there have been telepathic links, and it could be just like evolved. What did he say? Where is it? Evolved magic changelings, Borg nanoprobes combo or something like that. Sure, but he also doesn't think it actually is Borg, and I don't either. It's just kind of annoying. But and then when Steve and I talked about this before, we both were saying, if she's got control of the ship and the bridge, kill everyone, take Jack, and do your dang mission. Like,
No, she's
you
gonna
just
put them all in an easily escapable situation and tell them her entire plan. She was
Yeah,
serious
well, of
about
course.
and now I'm gonna tell you all the plan.
Yeah, and that's
They're
gonna be
gonna do that.
you know,
They're gonna do that. They're not gonna
no.
do that.
It
That's their
would be
writing
funny.
style.
Yeah, if next episode literally starts with like, so I told you guys I'd tell you who Jack really is, and I'm going to now, and they like actually start where they left off, would be pretty hilarious. I mean, so let's make some predictions. So the episode was pretty bad. Worst of the season, still better than all of season 2. Maybe not better than some of season 1, but season 1 in general. But what do you think about where this is going from what we know? Is the next episode going to be better? They're doing a 2-part, right? Is it a
Well,
2-part ending?
there was an interview. Oh, you mean for the last 2 episodes? There's a 2-part.
I think there might
This
be.
is 7. There'll be 8, and then 9, 10. I don't
Yeah.
know what their plan
3
is.
episodes left.
I just said that the interview is that Metalis described 7 and 8 as being sort of like a 2-part movie, so that the subtext being, don't worry, there'll be a payoff, there'll be a plot that happens in the next episode that makes this make sense. Maybe.
Of course, he would say that.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm worried. I'm worried at this point.
Yeah, that's the thing about this episode is having such a bad episode here that was bad in all the ways that I thought season 2 was bad, or in a lot of the ways I thought season 2 was bad, and so mishandling of these sort of reveals and plot elements and character development at this point is not making me confident that they can pull off all these reveals they're setting up and actually land the season, actually finish this 3rd arc in a way that is satisfying and does good for. And I'm sure they'll still end up on the Enterprise D bridge and they'll have the ultimate ending we all want. But I don't see the Jack. I don't see this working right now. I don't have confidence. They were sort of building confidence, and as the episodes were going, and this to me undermined a lot of the confidence I had.
I agree, and it's sad, and so now I'm nervous. I was nervous about season 3 already. It started out strong. I think we talked about this last week or the week before. I think what we said is like we're actually feeling we can enjoy it now, and we're like feeling safe with this show, and that like it's going to be good.
We talked about confidence, like they were gradually getting confidence, and that they had to earn it.
Yeah, and like that's why our review, we were like having fun with the review because we were like, it's good, it's cool, I like it, and then it sucks. Like a week later, we're like, ah man, like, and it's not completely gone. Like I'm not completely hopeless right now, but I'm really nervous. Like I don't have a good feeling about the last 3 episodes. I think we'll probably still get some really cool moments. I just don't think I don't think it's gonna come together. There's just too much going on, and it's too complicated. So there's no way that they're gonna be like, it's like the show Lost. Like it was such a cool show, but there's no way that was gonna end really well. It just they did too much. They made too much happen.
These types
so you
of
almost knew
reveal setups in this type of genre,
they don't end well.
They can never really pay off as much as the game that they're making you play.
Exactly. That's a good point. So it's basically they're setting up too much to pay off too little. And a lot of the setup is just little details, and I think they think that the audience won't really care or notice or worry about it. And I still want to give props to Metalis, and I still want to say that like if this was season 1 of Picard, I would be like, cool, this can be better, and this might be cool. It's not, though. It's the last season, so it's big expectations of like how they're going to finish this out. Maybe that's not fair to the season, considering how bad the first 2 were. But yeah. Oh, what's up? Is it making noise?
Yeah, you were just. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you were scratching the sidewall.
Frig! I need a better mic, or we just need to like do this podcast where we were supposed to, on the bridge of
the Enterprise D.
Which
that would be awesome.
So I was gonna say, to kind of summarize what I'm saying. Will it make up if the season ends badly, but they do all end up on the Enterprise D as the full crew of TNG? Will it save the
With
season?
Denise Crosby and Will Wheaton.
You think?
Oh, I have a theory when we're ready for that. But you finish your question.
Will Wheaton's just going to be like, I've slipped between two dimensions to come say hello.
Hey,
And then like the
brother!
travelers with him. Yeah, then he'd be like, I know you. You aren't me. But what I was going to say is, will it make up for a bad ending to a half decent season? And I think the answer is maybe, because because I so badly want to see the original crew on the original Enterprise. Like I mean, that's what I've wanted from the beginning anyway. Steve and I talked about this last night, and we were both saying that they literally could have like made the Picard show still take place. It doesn't have to be the exact same Enterprise, but we were talking about how like Picard's an admiral. Maybe he could be retired. You know, Riker's the captain. They're on a ship still. They do missions. They seek out new life. They explore new worlds. They boldly go. But Picard is more like the Bilbo Baggins who's like writing a book while he's on the ship. And he's like, but he's there and he's like, he still participates in what's going on, but he's kind of like on like, you know, he's writing a book. He's kind of reflecting on his life. And that was what Picard.
That would be cool. And then there could be like more stuff going on.
Right, like, and it's episodic. It's episodic.
Right. Yeah, and explore different things.
And they go to 10 Forward and they talk about Data writing a bad poem. And
we just need poetry about the
like,
cat.
About
Spot.
Anything, for goodness sakes. Yeah. I mean, where's Spot? Where's Spot's cameo?
But I'll get into my theory. Steven dropped a theory. Is Tim's theory that the 9 changelings become the 9 TNG crew members in the early 90s and go explore planets on the Enterprise D? No, that wasn't it, but I like it.
Actually, 9 changelings, dude.
This is my theory, and it's a theory about Krang. So who Krang is. So remember I was saying Krang was saying he's not a solid. He also said them solids, and he said them changeling. So he's neither a solid or a changeling. He's Armus. Remember, so Armus was that oil monster that killed Yar. Remember in the first season? And
he was kind of not a solid. Well, he wasn't a solid.
No, he wasn't a solid, but he wasn't really a changeling. So he could be Armus. Now it's Armus. Now, through some sort of Armus goo or a flashback or something, we get Denise Crosby as Yar is back. And to help them defeat Armus. And then that's how the crew gets it all back together.
Through the goo?
Through the goo.
Can we call this episode Through the Goo?
It's better than Dominion, because it didn't have much to do with the Dominion.
There's so much goo in this episode. So that character's name was Armus. I don't think I remembered that.
Yep, Armus. Skinny Beeble.
So I kind of like that. I kind of like that it's Armus. I kind of like that it's like the goo monster. And then, so wait, Yar comes out through the goo monster? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so
she somehow like,
because remember she was killed by the goo monster's goo, so she comes back from the goo and helps them defeat Armus, because Armus was kind of gooey.
Yeah, and then they could call the next episode the Goonies.
And they could have and you know how they keep referencing the classic themes for the different settings like Voyager, Deep Space Nine. They could have the Goonies theme in the intro.
I would love that too.
I don't know how the Goonies theme goes.
No, but it's something like that. It's very exciting.
It's an exciting.
It's very exciting. Okay, so that's your theory. My theory is the goo guy. No, wait. Now I'm calling him the goo guy, and that's not what
Armus?
We don't think he's a goo guy. Well, I mean, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, he is kind of the goo guy so far because he's like Vadic's hand, which is goo. Changeling goo. I don't know if I have a theory. I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah, I kind of don't care.
You don't care. No, I did have a theory. I did. I did have a theory. Who was the goo guy? No, I don't remember.
Thanos?
At this point,
Snoke?
yeah, Snoke. I want it to be Roman.
Was there a, what in the Power Rangers? In Power
Sauron.
Rangers, the villain was a lady, but she had some gooey head thing that bossed her around too, right?
Yeah, well, what gooey head thing?
Did she? Or am I just not remembering? I'm mixing it with other things.
Well, there was like there was a disembodied head that talked to the Power Rangers.
Oh, maybe that's what I was thinking of. But
I
he
forget
wasn't the
its name,
bad
but it was
guy.
Rita. Rita was the bad guy.
Yeah, Rita.
She'd always be like, "Make my monsters grow." So
Just like Vatic. Just like Vatic.
You think she's the bad guy? It's. Oh no, I was gonna say it's not Moriarty. Like, I'm trying to think of all the different villains that like would make sense to be. We already saw Moriarty, and they didn't really do him justice.
No.
I'm gonna
Steve
say
says if Andy Serkis plays him, I'll take Snoke. Andy Serkis could be the bad guy.
Andy Serkis never played Snoke.
Didn't he?
This is Steve.
Oh, Steve's saying he'd wish Andy Serkis could play him.
Well, Andy Serkis. Okay, then that's my theory. It's not a character from Star Trek, the Star Trek universe. It's actually Andy Serkis is the bad guy.
It's Andy Serkis himself, the actor.
Andy Serkis
like
as himself.
being John Malkovich. It's Andy Serkis.
Yeah, Andy Serkis as himself.
I like it. That works. If it's
that,
that's a satisfying ending.
It kind of would be in a really weird way. Like, I think people would be really confused, but satisfied, and that's a good feeling. Confusion and satisfaction at the same time.
I'll take it. I will take it.
I'll take it. I was gonna say I'll take anything at this point, but no, that's not true because there will be anything, and I still hope it's good. I still hope it's Borg related and Locutus related.
I still think it could be Locutus without the Borg, right?
I don't know. Sure.
I don't know.
Superman. Does Superman had red eyes sometimes?
Only when he was lasering people.
Yeah.
The only thing that ever had
Superman.
red eyes was the Power Wraiths, and that was pretty solidly similar type red eyes.
I mean, they are trying to get like Dominion stuff in there pretty bad, like all the like Dominion War and like, all that stuff. So
they sort of are, but they're also keeping a lot of like Deep Space Nine lore at, because we haven't had a single reference to the Jem'Hadar, single reference to the Vorta, single reference to the wormhole. Like I feel
there's
like
more DS9 though.
But I feel like they are really sort of selectively referencing Deep Space Nine, but keeping most of it separate. Which, I mean, fine if they want to sort of handle the world that way, but it suggests is that there isn't going to be more Deep Space Nine stuff going on. That's what I think.
Are we going to see Janeway?
Yeah, well, we've referenced Janeway like 5 times. We know Tuvok's coming back. I think we're definitely seeing Janeway. Yeah, I think we're definitely getting a cameo. I don't think it'll be big, but I think... Because we need to see someone from Starfleet that isn't a changeling. We need to see that eventually, at least in the end, it's going to be Janeway.
Okay, cool. What I was going to say, too, is I think the Krang you're calling it, I think there's this kind of like, it has to be like one of the 8. What?
Well, I should have cut to a picture of him forever ago.
Yeah, what were you thinking?
Oh, that's the closest I got.
All I see is... I just see
the back of his, like,
the back of Krang.
Head.
Over the shoulder of Krang. What if Krang is not... Oh, yeah, Steve had said this, maybe Cass.
Evil
Cass
Cass?
had become, like, evil at one point.
Yeah, I don't think that's a popular episode or a popular ending of her story.
She's probably even eviler now.
Eviler than her.
Yeah, she's just been in space, like, getting eviler and eviler.
That's what originally happened to her.
But that's... What if it's Neelix?
I like Neelix better. He just... The same thing happened to him. He just was left in space and got eviler and eviler.
Yeah. He's just really confused and just wants friends and then got really mean.
That's why he went after Tuvok.
Yeah, that's exactly why he went after Tuvok. Now we'll know that. But yeah, I think maybe that this disembodied head dude is like a human character, like not necessarily a alien race, but like maybe like one of the human characters that has reason to be angry at Starfleet. But why does it want Jack?
It kept
Is there
referring
somebody-
it referred to solids as them. Now maybe it was just the language it was using as it was talking to Vatic, but I don't know. I just the way it didn't seem like it was a solid. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I could. The problem is I don't know what I can read into with these writers. I don't know. They set up you have to play this game and try to figure out what these things are, because there's nothing else that's going to happen until Thursday, but they don't. You don't know what we can take seriously, what we can't. It never works out because they always overthink things, and then it's just like the simplest, obvious thing.
Yeah.
So
but I think that's why it's fun I think almost more fun to come up with theories for this, because we know that we're probably going to be wrong, and you can just like throw out the most ridiculous thing. So
yeah,
that being
that's
said,
a lot of what we're doing.
If you're watching, play the game with us. What is the most bizarre possibility of what this what's the obscure Star Trek character that you think Krang is, this disembodied head
Roga
character?
Danar.
Tell us in the comments. Huh?
Roga Danar? He was that super soldier who was like arrested, he was that super soldier that was like a match for Data in that one episode.
Oh, what if it's Mott the barber?
I like that one. Because that's why he's that color, because he was tired of being... Oh, what was it? The red Bolian? They kept referencing the red Bolian. The red Bolian is Mott. He paints himself red. Looks like a weird head.
Oh my goodness. It's Mott.
I think we saw Mott's barbershop on the Stardust City rag.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Outrageous Okana. We've already had... I don't know if Steve's watched Star Trek Prodigy, but Okana appears in that.
He was outrageous, from what I remember.
He was outrageous.
Or what about the kid that thought he was Data? He'd be mad.
Timothy?
Wouldn't he be mad? Oh yeah, his name was Tim. Oh my god. So good.
No, maybe.
Yeah.
He's angry at the Federation for killing his parents. He finally realizes that, and...
Yeah. Well, let us know. Let us know in the comments. I'm going to keep saying that. Let us know in the comments.
Do it. Oh, it's too late.
It's too late. We did this one real late. Sorry, folks. Although I don't think it matters for people watching.
They can pause it and watch it at their convenience in the future.
Yeah. Well, they can't pause us live. Like, if they want to see us live and direct, and they want to see all the foolish things that because we edit this later, right? People don't actually like get to see all the mistakes we make.
Yeah, this is the stuff we left in. Imagine the stuff we cut.
I think I'm tired.
Yeah.
Tired of lazy writing in Star Trek Picard. Please, episode 8 be better. We're excited for you. Don't let us down.
Don't break our hearts.
We trust you, just like Geordi trusted. It wasn't Data that he was trusting. It was Data inside lore. I don't know.
But he needed him to sort of overcome the death.
Data. I know
the
you're in
Edo's
there, Data.
god.
Do the thing.
The Edo's god was angry at the Federation. No, maybe it wasn't that.
Oh, the crystalline entity.
That would have a lore connection. But the crystalline entity wasn't actually evil. It just was a completely different life form that didn't understand it was killing everything, right? I think that was the subtext. Or was it evil? I don't think it was evil.
But is that not evil, Tim?
Having no ethics is the most evil.
So long as laws are absolute.
With no God, anything is possible. Dostoevsky.
Okay, awkward silences are starting to take over the episode here. Thanks for joining us. Everyone did a good job. Let's see, or the comeback 5 centuries robots. Oh yeah, ugly bags of water. Oh, ugly bags of mostly water. I don't remember what that alien was called, that alien race, but yeah, come back 5 centuries. So maybe they just got bored and they were like, we came back less than 5 centuries.
Or maybe that's maybe everyone always assumes 5 centuries matches Earth centuries. They were working on their own centuries.
Yeah, and 5 centuries just meant 5 mistakes you made, and they made 5 more mistakes, and it was a bad translation. Oh, okay. Last prediction. Last prediction. It's the guys that say, "Make us strong" to Geordie.
Oh, the Packlids.
Yeah,
That
who
would
it
be
is.
awesome. The Packlids are in the Lower Decks cartoon a lot in the last couple season or so. You've-
They were fun.
They were good characters.
Okay. Well, what do you think? Want to say our
Yeah, we
adieu?
got to end
And
this.
see you next week.
Um,
See you next week. To all of the
See you
view.
next week. There's 3 more
To all.
episodes. We'll say what we think,
I don't have any
and we'll be honest about it. I got a little left,
because we can't help it.
and I hope we've kept you
Engaged.
engaged.
I pretend to drink. Oh, there was like a drop in there.
There. All right. Let's wrap it up. Thanks. That was that episode.
Ta-ra.